Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 1377. Crazy Ravings. Countless demonesses of varying sizes brought with them the destruction of all matter, causing the scene of the entire Hornacis mountain range to develop in the direction of turning into a huge stone sphere. This made the dilapidated walls of the ancient palace collapse rapidly, exposing Klein, who was in the middle of the hall, along with his avatar and marionette out into the middle of the astral world. Just as the python-like black tentacles were about to rush into the palace, a crimson moon rose up like a scene from the apocalypse. In the perimeter of the hall that was bathed in moonlight, a cluster of wheat instantly grew out. There were flowers, mushrooms, and trees. They intertwined with each other, layer by layer, sealing the palace that belonged to Antigonus. At that moment, the hall where Klein was in seemed to be a ruin that had been sealed in history and a forest for thousands of years, as though it had been swallowed up by nature. The python-like black tentacles with eyes on their tips were blocked by plants growing wildly. They rose up as they constantly struck the screen that originated from nature, causing the latter to collapse or peel under layer after layer of petrification effects. However, no matter whether it was the wheat, flowers, mushrooms, trees, or newborns, they quickly returned to Earth Mother's embrace and grew again. Just like that, the barriers of nature were reborn and destroyed, layer by layer, as layer after layer was reborn. This showdown entered a stalemate. Earth Mother, who controlled the moon's uniqueness, fended off primordial Demoness Cheek. At this moment, a light that couldn't be seen by most beyonders landed from high above and crashed into the barrier of nature that used plants as a foundation. The light didn't have a physical body, as though it was formed from a flux of massive and miscellaneous information. In its illusory form, it tore through the gaps between the plants, like a torrent, heading straight for Klein, who was about to retrieve the translucent mask. Hidden Sage! At this moment, a blurry light shot out from the void, revealing picture-like projections around Klein. Some of them recorded the helplessness and misery humans felt when facing supernatural beings. Some of them used an epic-like brush to reenact the scenes of humans using their own bodies as experiments to attempt fusing with beyonder ingredients to obtain strength and save the race. Some described the unique cultures and traditions due to a black emperor, while others carried various viewpoints, books, and inventions. Some resembled the dawn of the present world, starting from the massive machinery that spewed steam, buildings that rose higher and higher, and clothes that made movement easier. The contents made the seemingly thin painting exude a heaviness. This was because they bore the inspiration and development of civilization, of human society at different stages. Back then, the god of craftsmanship didn't properly digest the Sequence 1 civilization enlightener potion before advancing to Sequence 0 due to various reasons. He maintained his rationality and lucidity. However, this made him have to focus more on resisting the madness and inclination towards losing control. Amongst the 7 orthodox gods, he was slightly weaker than the other existences. The reason why the Church of Steam was the weakest orthodox organization was that, apart from having the shortest history and the least heritage, its corresponding god was also not in the best of conditions. By the time Roselle raised the Industrial Revolution as the son of Steam, a member of the Church, and brought with him all sorts of ideas, the god of craftsmanship took the opportunity to change his name to the god of steam and machinery, sharing in the progress of the enlightenment of civilization, and digested the corresponding potion. As a true god in a neighboring pathway, he eventually chose to stand on the orthodox deity's side after the hidden sage chose to be Klein's enemy. The terrifying flood of information crashed into the illusory pictures and rapidly expanded, attempting to crack the cage. However, the tens of thousands of years of civilizations were thick and vast. The history left behind by generations of humans that numbered hundreds of millions was so vast and magnificent. It was enough to contain the information flux of the hidden sage. When the hidden sage tried breaking through the limitations of the god of steam and machinery, in the hall of the Antigonus Hall that was sealed by layers of plants, Klein extended his slippery and strange tentacles to grab the translucent mask that represented the fool's uniqueness before moving it towards his face. Just as the mask covered Klein's face, numerous figures appeared around him. Some of them were men wearing postman uniforms. Some were ordinary birds, while others were microbes that couldn't be seen with the naked eye. There were hundreds or thousands of them. The hall that only had corpses hanging in the air suddenly became crowded. And the commonality of these figures was that they wore crystal monocles, or had a circular emblem of different colors in the same position. Amon! The avatars of Mr. Amon! It was unknown if they had used the primordial demonists or the hidden sage's attacks to open a back door and use a loophole to secretly arrive near the target. Looking at Klein, who had just put on the translucent mask and was beginning to accommodate the fool's uniqueness, these Amons revealed a smile at the same time. They opened their mouths and said words that ordinary people wouldn't be capable of understanding. These words intertwined and formed terrifying and crazy ravings. You overlooked the primordial demoness. For her, Medici, who has only recovered to sequence 1, is no threat at all. Her greatest wish right now is to immediately produce a Lord of the Mysteries and open the seal of the Western continent, allowing her to have a chance of finding the City of Calamity. It's obvious that, compared to you, I'm the better choice. You're too weak. Heh. Are you still waiting for the Mother Tree of Desire or the Mother Goddess of Depravity to provide you with help? It's useless. I placed the first blasphemy slate into the fog sea and placed it near the abyss's entrance, not far from that primitive island. Also, the enhanced seal brought about by the corresponding authority of doors and half of the Lord of the Astral World's control towards the world barrier prevents any outer deity from being able to have their powers penetrate inside for a short period. And without the influence of the outer deities, the dark side of the universe and the chained god currently do not wish to interfere in the battle of gods. They would rather seize this opportunity to escape their restraints. They also wish that a Lord of the Mysteries would be born as soon as possible to help them escape from the predicament. If it wasn't for the fact that stirring them would also trigger the outer deity corruption in them, I can promise you that I would have already reached an agreement with them to deal with you together. Amon was deliberately using real information to fill up the ravings, using this to make Klein suffer the effects of a two-pronged approach. One was the mental corruption brought about by the ravings, and the other was the corresponding content that distracted him. In any case, it wasn't a waste of time to him. On the one hand, he had sufficient avatars. Each worm of time saying one word was enough for him to form many words. On the other hand, he forcefully fused the information together, making a single word represent many things. At that instant, the ravings of Amon echoed in Klein's mind like sharp blades that pierced through his psyche, tearing through his mind. Normally, Klein could use his own status to suppress the ravings that were at most at the level of a sequence 1. It wouldn't affect him, but at this moment, he was accommodating the fool's uniqueness. His mental state was in a weak and subtle balance. Under such a scene, a straw might crush the camel's back, much less so many of Amon's avatars. Furthermore, while Klein felt a sharp pain in his psyche and his self-awareness was in a mess, the sleeping mental imprint of Antigonus and the will of the celestial worthy of heaven and earth for blessings showed signs of awakening. In a sense, eternal slumber was an extreme seal. The Amons, who had accommodated Door's uniqueness, could undoubtedly be able to weaken the seal, or even make it lose its effectiveness. Also, the translucent mask that Klein had just worn on his face, the fool's uniqueness, obtained an even stronger remnant will from the celestial worthy of heaven and earth for blessings. It was also gradually breaking free from the influence of eternal slumber, and it had a certain resonance effect with the same being in Klein's body. Without using any beyonder powers, the Amons, who had simply created a few ravings, had thrown Klein into a state of imbalance, and he was on the brink of losing control. Furthermore, all of this seemed irreversible unless there was more river water from the river of eternal darkness that allowed Antigonus's mental imprint, and the even more powerful will of the celestial worthy of heaven and earth for blessings to continue sleeping. But at this moment, even if there was still the river water of the river of eternal darkness, the Evernight goddess wasn't able to divert her attention. This was because she was trying her best to suppress the dual pathway true god, Amon. From this point of view, the Amans were deliberately sacrificing their true body to stall the Evernight goddess, to create an opportunity for the avatars to destroy Klein's ritual. This was a little risky, but the result looked pretty good. At that moment, Klein's pocket lit up. The light was a pale golden color like sticky syrup. It instantly enveloped the surrounding area. Illuminated by this light included Klein and his avatar, as well as the book that was suddenly thrown over by the distant marionette. 0-02, Trunso's Brass Book. The sealed artifact extended its body in midair. As it bathed in the pale golden light, a rule suddenly appeared on the blank page. It was completely different from the repeated laws from before. Speaking is prohibited here. Amon's avatars kept opening and closing their mouths, but they could no longer make a sound. A line appeared under the previous rule an instant later. Attacking each other is prohibited here. Pa! The Trunso's brass book fell to the ground and spread open by Klein's feet. Under the illumination of the magic wishing lamp, it actually managed to break free from the repeated cycle from before, and it set up rules that were beneficial to Klein. With just a glance, the Amans made different responses. A portion of them adjusted their monocles, and together they raised their right hands and gently clenched it, using the corresponding authority to strengthen the seal. On the Trunso's brass book, a line of text before those rules gradually formed. All the following rules are ineffective. Another portion of Amans locked onto Klein, who was on the boundary of losing control. Not being able to attack him didn't mean that stealing and gifting were prohibited.